In the heart of a quiet, forgotten small town nestled between rolling hills, the story begins. The town, once bustling with activity, now has an air of stillness. Its charm lingers in the form of old brick buildings with faded paint, a lone diner with a flickering neon sign, and tree-lined streets that seem to whisper memories of livelier days. Here, the sounds of life are gentle, birds chirping, the occasional chatter of neighbors, and the hum of the wind weaving through the trees. Amidst this serene backdrop stands a modest single-story home, its white paint weathered but well-kept, with a garden filled with neatly trimmed hedges and rows of vibrant flowers. This is the home of Dorothy Hayes, a 90-year-old veteran with a proud yet quiet demeanor. Despite her age, Dorothy's sharp eyes, steady hands, and upright posture reveal a woman who has weathered countless storms. She spends her days tending her garden, feeding the stray cat that has claimed her porch, and enjoying the company of her memories. Dorothy's presence commands a quiet respect in the neighborhood. Her story is well known among the townsfolk, a living testament to a time when courage and resilience were necessities, not luxuries. Yet, in recent years, she's become a solitary figure, her once lively home now devoid of the laughter and warmth that once filled it. Dorothy's life is a tapestry of extraordinary achievements and profound loss. Born in 1934, she grew up in a time when the world seemed to change overnight. At just 18, she defied societal expectations by enlisting in the military during World War II. She became a nurse on the front lines, where she witnessed the raw realities of war. Anecdotes of her bravery are still whispered among the older residents of the town. There was the time she risked her life to pull a wounded soldier to safety under enemy fire, earning her a Medal of Valor. Or the way she stayed awake for 3 days straight, tending to injured comrades during a critical battle. Dorothy was more than a nurse. She was a pillar of strength for those around her, offering a steady hand and a comforting word when the chaos of war threatened to overwhelm them. Dorothy's life is a tapestry of extraordinary achievements and profound loss, woven with threads of courage, resilience, and sacrifice. Born in 1934 to a working-class family in a small Midwest town, Dorothy grew up during the Great Depression, a period that taught her the value of hard work and community. Her parents, humble but proud, instilled in her the belief that strength wasn't just about physical endurance but also about standing up for what was right, even when the odds were stacked against you. As a teenager, Dorothy watched the world shift dramatically when World War II broke out. At just 18, fueled by a sense of duty and a desire to make a difference, she defied societal expectations by enlisting in the military. It was an era when women were often expected to stay behind the front lines, contributing from home as nurses, factory workers, or homemakers. Dorothy, however, wanted to serve directly, to be where the action was. She trained rigorously and became a nurse on the front lines, stationed in Europe during some of the war's most intense campaigns. The work was grueling, the conditions harsh, and the dangers ever-present. Yet, Dorothy thrived. Her steady hand stitched wounds, her calm voice soothed the dying, and her sharp instincts often meant the difference between life and death for countless soldiers. Dorothy's bravery during those years became the stuff of legend, whispered among the older residents of the town and retold to younger generations as lessons in courage. One of the most famous stories was of the time she risked her life to pull a wounded soldier to safety under heavy enemy fire. The soldier, a young man barely out of high school, had been left stranded in no man's land during a surprise attack. Without hesitation, Dorothy grabbed her medical bag and dashed into the fray. Bullets whizzed past her, the ground shook with explosions, but she kept going. She reached the soldier, stabilized his injuries as best she could, and dragged him back to safety. For her heroism, Dorothy was awarded the Medal of Valor, though she rarely mentioned it, considering it just another day's work. Then there was the time during the Battle of the Bulge when she worked tirelessly for 3 days straight, refusing to rest as waves of wounded soldiers poured into the field hospital. Supplies ran low, and the air was thick with despair, but Dorothy never wavered. She improvised with what little she had, using torn bed sheets as bandages and ration tins to sterilize instruments. Her determination lifted the spirits of everyone around her, giving them hope even in the face of overwhelming odds. Her comrades often said that Dorothy was more than a nurse. She was a beacon of light in the darkest of times. Soldiers who came to her tent battered and broken left feeling as though they could face the world again, if only because Dorothy believed in them. But war wasn't without its cost. Dorothy lost friends, both soldiers she treated and fellow medics she worked alongside. Each loss weighed heavily on her, but she never allowed it to break her. Instead, she carried their memories with her, using their sacrifices as motivation to keep going. One loss, however, stayed with her more than any other: a young lieutenant named Jack Hayes. Jack was a communications officer who often visited the field hospital, helping Dorothy and her team set up secure lines for medical supplies. Over time, a bond grew between them, one built on shared hardships and mutual admiration. They had plans to meet for dinner at a small village cafe the night he was killed during an ambush. Dorothy never spoke much about Jack, but those who knew her said his death was the one wound time could never fully heal. After the war, Dorothy returned home and dedicated her life to serving her community. She married a kind-hearted man, also a veteran, who shared her values of resilience and hard work. Together, they built a modest life filled with quiet joy and purpose. Dorothy became a pillar of the town, volunteering at the local hospital, mentoring young women, and organizing events to honor the town's veterans. Over the years, as her husband passed and her peers grew fewer, Dorothy's role in the community faded into the background. Yet, she remained a figure of quiet strength, her stories and sacrifices remembered by those who had the privilege of hearing them. Dorothy never sought recognition for her actions. She believed that doing the right thing was reward enough. Now, at 90 years old, Dorothy carries with her the wisdom of a lifetime spent fighting for others, whether on the battlefield or in her own backyard. Though her steps may have slowed, her spirit remains unyielding, and her memories of bravery serve as both a comfort and a guide. Little did she know, another battle was brewing, one that would remind everyone, including Dorothy herself, of the indomitable strength that still lay within her. After the war, Dorothy married her sweetheart, Thomas, a fellow veteran. Together, they built a life centered on community and compassion. Dorothy became a school teacher and later an advocate for veterans' rights, while Thomas served as the town's postmaster. The couple was beloved in the town, hosting barbecues and community events that brought everyone together. But Thomas's passing 10 years ago marked the beginning of Dorothy's quiet retreat from the world. Now, Dorothy's days are filled with memories of a life well lived. Her home is adorned with photos, medals, and mementos of her past. Yet, there's a sense that she feels the weight of time, her contributions to the world slowly fading into the background of a town that is moving on without her. The town's peace is recently disrupted by the arrival of a biker gang. They've taken to congregating at an abandoned lot on the outskirts of town, transforming it into their unofficial clubhouse. The gang, with their roaring engines and leather jackets, exudes an air of intimidation. The bikers' presence is impossible to ignore. Their late-night gatherings fill the once quiet streets with a deafening roar of engines, loud music, and raucous laughter. Empty beer cans and cigarette butts litter the lot, and their graffiti mars nearby walls. For the elderly residents of the town, the bikers are a source of unease. Many avoid the area altogether, whispering warnings to their grandchildren about staying away. But for Dorothy, their behavior is more than just a nuisance. It's an affront to the values of respect and order she holds dear. Dorothy watches them from her porch, her sharp eyes narrowing as they race their bikes past her house, leaving a cloud of dust in their wake. She's reminded of the discipline and honor instilled in her during her military days, values that seem lost on this group of unruly young men. The first confrontation between Dorothy and the bikers is almost inevitable. One evening, Dorothy notices the gang lingering near her property. Their loud laughter and blaring music drown out the peaceful hum of the evening. Summoning her courage, Dorothy walks over to them, her cane tapping rhythmically against the pavement. "Excuse me," she says, her voice firm but polite. "Would you mind keeping it down? Some of us are trying to enjoy a quiet evening." Her words are met with mocking laughter. One of the bikers, a burly man with a smirk plastered across his face, steps forward. "And what are you going to do about it, Grandma?" he sneers. Dorothy's jaw tightens, but she doesn't back down. "You might think you're tough, but respect goes a lot further than noise and bravado," she replies, her tone steady. The bikers laugh her off, but Dorothy's unflinching gaze lingers in their minds as they rev their engines and speed away. The next day, Dorothy wakes up to find her garden fence vandalized. Spray painted on the wood is a crude drawing and a message: "Stay out of our way, Granny." Instead of fear, Dorothy feels a simmering determination. This isn't the first time she's faced bullies, and she won't let them win. As Dorothy tends to her garden later that day, she notices something peculiar: a biker lingering near her property, watching her with a smirk before disappearing into the distance. That night, she hears the unmistakable sound of a motorcycle idling outside her home, the headlights casting eerie shadows on her walls. Dorothy realizes this isn't just a nuisance anymore, it's personal. Determined to take action, she retreats to her study, where she begins rifling through old documents and making a phone call. "Hello, it's Dorothy," she says, her voice calm but resolute. "I need your help." The screen fades to black, leaving the audience wondering, what is Dorothy planning, and who did she call? Dorothy believes in handling matters with dignity and reason. Determined to avoid escalating the situation, she decides to confront the bikers once more, this time with a calm and collected approach. One sunny afternoon, Dorothy ventures toward the abandoned lot where the bikers have gathered. The roar of engines and boisterous laughter momentarily drown out the sound of her cane tapping against the pavement. As she nears the group, the bikers pause, exchanging amused glances. "Excuse me," Dorothy begins, her voice steady but resolute. "I know you boys think you're just having fun, but this is a neighborhood. People live here, and we all deserve some peace and respect." The gang leader, a man with a leather jacket emblazoned with a skull, steps forward, grinning. "And what makes you think we care, Grandma?" he sneers, his voice dripping with condescension. Dorothy takes a deep breath. "I've lived long enough to know that respect is earned, not demanded. Why don't we talk this out? Find a way to coexist without stepping on each other's toes?" Her words are met with raucous laughter. "Coexist?" One biker mocks. "Lady, we're not here to make friends." As Dorothy turns to leave, a soda can sails past her, hitting the ground with a metallic clang. The message is clear, they aren't interested in peace. That evening, Dorothy shares her frustration with a few neighbors during a chance encounter at the diner. "Maybe it's best to let it go," says Mrs. Palmer, the widow from across the street. "They're young and reckless. Nothing you say will change that." Even the town sheriff, a middle-aged man with a weary expression, seems reluctant to intervene. "Without hard evidence, there's not much I can do," he says, avoiding her gaze. Dorothy returns home, feeling a growing sense of isolation. It seems no one else is willing to stand up to the bikers. The bikers' behavior worsens as if emboldened by Dorothy's attempts to reason with them. Late-night parties at the lot grow louder, the thrum of engines and blasting music echoing through the quiet streets. One morning, Dorothy finds more graffiti on her fence. This time, it's a crude caricature of her face with the words, "Stay down, Granny," scrawled beneath it. Later, she notices her garden gate hanging off its hinges, the wood splintered as though it had been kicked in. As the harassment escalates, Dorothy's once peaceful routine is disrupted. The bikers rev their engines outside her house late at night, the noise rattling her windows. Dorothy feels the weight of their intimidation but refuses to give in. Meanwhile, Alex, the 20-year-old neighbor who lives next door, watches the events unfold with a mix of guilt and fear. He's a kind-hearted young man, but his reluctance to get involved stems from a desire to avoid conflict. "They're dangerous, Miss Hayes," he says one evening when Dorothy catches him outside. "Maybe it's better to just keep your head down." The bikers' behavior worsens, as though Dorothy's attempts to reason with them had only fueled their boldness. Late-night parties at the abandoned lot become even more raucous, the thrum of motorcycle engines and the blare of heavy music carrying through the quiet streets like an unwelcome storm. Bottles clink and shatter in the night, laughter and jeers piercing the serene evenings that Dorothy had cherished for decades. One morning, Dorothy steps outside to retrieve her mail and freezes. More graffiti defaces her once pristine fence. This time, it's not just vulgar symbols but a crude caricature of her face with the mocking words, "Stay down, Granny," scrawled beneath it in jagged black spray paint. Her stomach knots at the sight, but her resolve only hardens. Later that week, another insult greets her. She notices her garden gate hanging askew, the hinges bent and the wood splintered as though someone had violently kicked it in. Her well-tended roses, a source of quiet joy, are trampled under careless boots. Dorothy spends the afternoon repairing what she can, her hands steady but her heart heavy. The harassment grows relentless. Some nights, the bikers rev their engines right outside her house, the thunderous noise rattling her windows and vibrating through the walls. Other nights, their laughter and shouts feel as though they're directed straight at her, meant to pierce through the dark and unsettle her. Dorothy lies awake, gripping the quilt her late husband gave her, the once comforting fabric now a reminder of how vulnerable she feels. Despite the growing fear, Dorothy refuses to give in. She continues her daily routines, tending to her garden, walking to the post office, chatting with her neighbors, though each step is taken under the shadow of their taunting presence. She knows they watch her from a lot, their smirks and sneers a constant background to her life. But she holds her head high, refusing to show weakness. Meanwhile, Alex, her 20-year-old next-door neighbor, observes the unfolding situation with a mounting sense of guilt and fear. Alex is a kind-hearted young man, fresh out of high school and unsure of his place in the world. He often helps Dorothy carry her groceries or mows her lawn when he sees she's been too busy with her flowers to keep up with it. Yet, when it comes to the bikers, his courage falters. One evening, as Dorothy stands on her porch surveying her damaged gate, she notices Alex lingering near the edge of his driveway. "Alex," she calls softly, beckoning him over. He hesitates before shuffling toward her, his hands jammed into his hoodie pockets. "Hi, Miss Hayes," he says, his eyes flickering between her and the broken gate. "Sorry about your garden. It's awful what they're doing." Dorothy studies him, her sharp gaze softened by concern. "They're nothing but bullies, Alex," she replies. "But bullies only win if good people stay silent." Alex exhales heavily, avoiding her eyes. "They're dangerous," he murmurs, the fear evident in his voice. "Maybe it's better to just keep your head down. Let it blow over." Dorothy straightens, her hands gripping the porch railing. "And if I keep my head down, what happens next? They'll move on to someone else. Maybe even you. You can't hide from people like this, Alex. You have to stand up to them." Alex looks at her, conflicted. "I'm sorry, Ms. Hayes. I don't know if I can." Dorothy's expression softens, but her voice remains firm. "I understand, Alex. But you're stronger than you think." Sometimes, standing up doesn't mean facing them head-on. It means doing what's right, even in the smallest ways. As Alex nods and shuffles back toward his house, Dorothy watches him go, hoping her words will plant a seed of courage in his heart. For now, though, she knows she's still standing alone. But she also knows something else. Her resolve is unshaken, and the fight is far from over. Dorothy looks him in the eye. "Alex, staying silent in the face of injustice doesn't protect you. It makes you complicit. Remember that." Her words linger in Alex's mind, but he remains hesitant. As the harassment intensifies, Dorothy wrestles with her own doubts. In the quiet of her home, she sits by the window, gazing out at the moonlit street. She thinks back to her days in the war, days when fear was a constant companion but never a deterrent. She remembers her late husband, Thomas, and the advice he'd given her during their toughest moments. Strength isn't about never being afraid. It's about acting in spite of it. Dorothy feels the weight of her age more acutely than ever. She's no longer the fearless young woman who could face any challenge head-on. But deep down, she knows that giving up isn't in her nature. Late one night, Dorothy sits in her study, flipping through an old photo album. Images of her younger self in uniform, smiling with her comrades, bring a tear to her eye. "You didn't back down then," she murmurs to herself. "And you won't back down now." Determined to fight back, Dorothy begins documenting the bikers' activities. Armed with a camera and a notepad, she records the noise disturbances, vandalism, and other incidents. She photographs their gatherings at the lot, capturing evidence of illegal activities like drinking and drug use. One evening, while reviewing the photos she's taken, Dorothy notices a detail she hadn't seen before. One of the bikers is holding a package that looks suspiciously like stolen goods. Her resolve hardens. Dorothy also begins researching her options. She visits the local library, poring over legal texts and consulting with a sympathetic librarian who points her toward resources on filing complaints and presenting evidence to law enforcement. But Dorothy knows she'll need more than just the law on her side. One night, she picks up the phone and dials a number she hasn't used in years. "Hello, Sam," she says, her voice steady. "It's been a long time, but I need your help." The person on the other end pauses before responding. Is that really you? What's going on?" Dorothy doesn't provide all the details, but there's a sense of urgency in her tone. "I need someone who understands the meaning of honor. Someone who can stand by me." The conversation ends with a promise. Help is on the way. A few days later, the bikers' behavior reaches a boiling point. They gather outside Dorothy's house, revving their engines and shouting taunts. Dorothy steps out onto her porch, her silhouette framed by the warm glow of her porch light. "Enough," she says, her voice carrying over the noise. The gang leader smirks, stepping forward with a swagger. "What are you gonna do, Grandma? Call the cops." Dorothy stands her ground, her expression unflinching. "No," she replies, her voice calm but firm. "I'm going to end this." As the leader takes another step toward her, the screen fades to black, leaving the audience on the edge of their seats. The scene is set under the cover of dusk. The bikers have assembled outside Dorothy's house again, revving their engines and filling the street with chaos. Dorothy, clad in her sturdy military boots and a jacket adorned with her old medals, steps out onto her porch. The noise dies down as the bikers notice her presence. "All right, lady," the gang leader sneers. "You've had your fun. What's this, another lecture?" Dorothy's eyes are steady, unwavering. "Not a lecture," she replies. "A reckoning." She addresses the group with piercing conviction, her voice cutting through the tense air. "You think being loud and reckless makes you powerful? You don't know the first thing about strength. Strength isn't in scaring people who can't fight back. It's in standing for something, even when you're alone." The bikers laugh and jeer, their taunts laced with arrogance. But Dorothy doesn't flinch. Instead, she delivers a cryptic warning. "You've pushed me far enough. You might want to reconsider your next move because there are consequences you won't see coming." The gang leader takes a step forward, trying to intimidate her. "And what's an old lady like you gonna do about it?" Dorothy's expression remains calm. "You'll see soon enough." Just as the tension seems unbearable, the sound of vehicles approaching cuts through the night. Headlights pierce the darkness, illuminating the street as a convoy of cars and trucks pulls up. Dorothy's allies step out, a mix of former military comrades, local law enforcement, and even a few younger veterans from neighboring towns. Each one looks capable, resolute, and undeniably loyal to Dorothy. The gang's confidence falters as they realize what they're up against. One of Dorothy's old friends, Sam, a grizzled but imposing veteran, steps forward. "When Dot calls, we show up," he says simply, glaring at the bikers. Dorothy turns to the gang leader. "I warned you," she says, her tone sharp and deliberate. "You underestimated me, just like others have before you. Big mistake." The confrontation escalates as Dorothy's allies present the evidence she's collected. Photos, videos, and witness accounts are handed over to law enforcement, who immediately take action. The bikers' illegal activities, vandalism, drug possession, and theft, are laid bare for all to see. The gang scrambles to defend themselves, but their bravado crumbles. Some try to flee, only to be stopped by Dorothy's allies. The leader, however, remains defiant, his smirk faltering only slightly as Dorothy steps closer. "You've spent your time tearing people down," she says, her voice steady but filled with emotion. "But I've spent my life fighting for others. People like this town, people like me. And let me tell you something, bullies like you don't win in the end." The gang leader snarls, "You think you're better than us?" Dorothy's response is swift. "No, I know I am. Because I've earned the respect of everyone who's ever stood beside me. Can you say the same?" The silence that follows is deafening. One by one, the bikers are taken into custody or forced to pack up and leave town. With the bikers gone, peace is restored to the neighborhood. Dorothy's neighbors gather to thank her, their earlier hesitation replaced by gratitude and admiration. Alex, the young neighbor, approaches Dorothy, his head bowed in shame. "Miss Hayes," he begins, his voice trembling. "I should have helped you sooner. I was scared, but that's no excuse. I'm sorry." Dorothy places a comforting hand on his shoulder. "Courage isn't about never being scared, Alex. It's about doing what's right, even when you are. Remember that." The experience inspires Alex to take a more active role in the community, standing up for others and learning from Dorothy's example. Dorothy's reputation as a local hero is cemented, but she remains humble. "I didn't do this alone," she tells the gathered crowd. "We're stronger together than we ever are apart." As the sun sets on the newly tranquil street, Dorothy sits on her porch, a cup of tea in hand. Her phone rings, a number she doesn't recognize. She answers, her expression shifting from curiosity to quiet determination as the voice on the other end speaks. "We heard about what you did," the voice says. "We could use someone like you." Dorothy smiles faintly. "Tell me more," she replies, leaving the story open-ended and hinting at new adventures to come. The neighborhood, once overshadowed by fear and chaos, undergoes a profound transformation. Dorothy's bold stand becomes the catalyst for change, inspiring her neighbors to reclaim their sense of pride and ownership in the community. As the sun sets on the newly tranquil street, Dorothy sits on her porch, wrapped in a knitted shawl that her late husband once gifted her. A soft breeze carries the scent of blooming jasmine from her garden, mingling with the earthy aroma of the tea in her hands. The quiet hum of the evening feels almost surreal after the chaos that had consumed the neighborhood just weeks before. She gazes out at the street, now alive with the sounds of normalcy, a child's laughter, the distant bark of a dog, the faint rustle of leaves. The once abandoned lot where the bikers had gathered is now a vibrant community garden. Neighbors had come together to transform the space, planting rows of flowers, vegetables, and even a small apple tree that Alex had brought as a gesture of gratitude. Dorothy's thoughts drift as she sips her tea, reflecting on the chain of events that had unfolded. She recalls the fear she once felt, the doubts that crept in late at night, and the resolve that ultimately propelled her forward. It wasn't just her fight, it was a battle for something bigger, for dignity, for respect, and for the kind of community where everyone felt safe and valued. Her phone rings, pulling her from her reverie. The number is unfamiliar, and for a moment, she considers letting it go to voicemail. But something compels her to answer. "Hello," Dorothy says, her voice calm but tinged with curiosity. There's a brief pause before a steady voice responds on the other end. "Ms. Hayes, we've heard about what you did. The way you stood up for your town. It's impressive." Dorothy straightens in her chair, her grip on the phone tightening slightly. "Who is this?" "We're part of an organization," the voice continues, careful and deliberate. "We help communities facing challenges like yours. People like you. People with courage and conviction. We could use someone like you." Dorothy's eyes narrow slightly, her mind racing. She's no stranger to cryptic calls, and the voice on the line carries a tone of both respect and purpose. For a moment, she considers declining, retreating into the peace she's fought so hard to restore. But deep down, a familiar spark ignites, the same fire that had driven her to enlist all those years ago. A faint smile tugs at the corner of her lips. "Tell me more," she replies, her voice steady and full of quiet determination. The call ends a few minutes later, leaving Dorothy with much to think about. She places the phone down and leans back in her chair, her mind alight with possibilities. Whatever this is, whatever they want, it feels like the beginning of something. Meanwhile, the neighborhood continues its transformation, inspired by Dorothy's unwavering stand. The once muted residents have found their voices, organizing cleanup drives, potlucks, and neighborhood watch groups. Alex, emboldened by Dorothy's courage and shamed by his initial reluctance, takes on a leadership role. He volunteers to maintain the community garden, rallying other young people to take pride in their town. Dorothy's porch becomes a hub of activity, a place where neighbors stop by to chat, seek advice, or simply thank her for what she's done. Even those who were initially hesitant to get involved now speak of her with admiration, often saying, "If Dorothy can do it at her age, what excuse do we have?" The town's annual summer festival, which had been all but abandoned in recent years, is reinstated. Dorothy is given the honor of cutting the ribbon, her presence met with cheers and applause. She accepts the recognition with grace, though she insists, "This isn't just my victory, it's ours." Though peace has returned, Dorothy knows her work isn't done. Life has a way of presenting new challenges, and she's ready to face them, just as she always has. Whether it's mentoring Alex and the younger generation, lending her wisdom to her neighbors, or perhaps answering that mysterious call, Dorothy's story is far from over. As the evening deepens, Dorothy sits on her porch once more, the stars beginning to peek through the twilight sky. She takes a deep breath, feeling the weight of the world lift slightly from her shoulders. She doesn't know exactly what lies ahead, but one thing is certain: Dorothy Hayes isn't done making a difference. The camera pans out, capturing the quiet strength in her expression and the renewed vitality of the neighborhood she helped save. As the screen fades to black, a final message lingers: courage isn't the absence of fear, it's the determination to do what's right, no matter the odds. A group of volunteers, led by Alex and other young residents, organizes a town cleanup. Together, they repaint walls defaced by graffiti, repair damaged fences, and clear the abandoned lot that had become the bikers' hangout. The lot is eventually turned into a community garden, symbolizing growth and renewal. The older generation, many of whom had retreated into their homes, begin stepping out more often, re-engaging with the town they once loved. Conversations spark on porches, children play in the streets again, and the small-town charm Dorothy had always cherished starts to return. Alex, once hesitant to take a stand, emerges as a leader. With Dorothy's guidance, he helps organize neighborhood watch groups, ensuring that the town remains a safe and welcoming place. Ms. Hayes taught me that one person can make a difference, he tells the community during a meeting. But together, we can do even more. For Dorothy, the experience reignites a fire within her, a reminder of the strength, purpose, and resolve she's carried throughout her life. Though she never sought recognition, she finds herself embraced as a hero, a role model for courage and resilience. One quiet morning, Dorothy makes her way to the cemetery, carrying a bouquet of fresh flowers. She kneels by her husband's grave, the stone marked with his name and military service. "I did it, Jack," she says softly, her voice a mix of pride and longing. "I stood up when it mattered, just like you always told me to. And you were right, there's still so much I can do, even now." Her eyes mist over as she places the flowers down, her fingers tracing the engraved letters. "I wish you could have seen it. The town, the people. They reminded me that it's never too late to make a difference. You always knew that, didn't you?" As a soft breeze stirs the air, Dorothy feels a quiet sense of peace. Her husband may be gone, but his lessons, and his love, continue to guide her. Message is clear. One person can spark change, but it's the collective spirit of a community that sustains it. The town has returned to its former charm, but now it feels stronger, more united than ever before. Dorothy sits on her porch, the same sturdy chair she's had for decades, gazing out at the bustling street. Children ride their bikes past her house, waving and shouting, "Hi, Ms. Hayes." She smiles and waves back, her heart warmed by the vibrant life around her. Neighbors frequently stop by to chat or bring over baked goods, always making sure Dorothy knows she's never alone. Alex visits her often, sharing updates on the neighborhood, projects he's spearheading, and seeking her wisdom whenever he feels uncertain. As the camera pans over the revitalized town, the vibrancy of life spills into every frame. Children laugh and play in the community garden, their giggles mingling with the gentle rustle of leaves in the warm breeze. Neighbors stand in clusters on their porches, chatting amiably and exchanging stories, their faces lit with smiles and the sun's golden rays. The air is filled with the aroma of freshly baked bread and blooming flowers, a fragrant testament to the town's renewed spirit. At the heart of this transformation is Dorothy Hayes, who sits contentedly on her front steps, nestled in the same sturdy chair that has cradled her through decades of seasons. Her porch is adorned with flower pots bursting with color, a reflection of her vibrant personality and indomitable spirit. As she gazes out at the bustling street, her heart swells with a sense of belonging and pride. Children ride their bikes past her house, their laughter ringing like music in the air. "Hi, Ms. Hayes," they shout, waving enthusiastically as they zoom by. Dorothy's smile broadens, warmth flooding her chest as she waves back, feeling like a beloved matriarch in this lively scene. The joy of her neighbors and the innocence of the children remind her of the life she once fought to protect and preserve. Neighbors frequently stop by, bringing homemade baked goods or sharing snippets of their day. They linger on her porch, inviting her to join in their conversations, making sure she knows she's never alone. These small gestures mean the world to her. They reinforce the bonds that have been woven through shared struggles and triumphs. The community has truly rallied around her, transforming her solitude into a rich tapestry of connection and love. Among those who visit regularly is Alex, the 20-year-old neighbor who has taken on a leadership role in revitalizing the neighborhood. He stops by often, energized by his projects and eager to share updates. "We're planning a cleanup day for the park next week, Ms. Hayes. I'd love your input," he says one afternoon, his enthusiasm contagious. Dorothy listens intently as Alex outlines his ideas, her eyes sparkling with pride for the young man he's becoming. "You're doing great things, Alex. Just remember to listen to the voices of those around you," she advises, her voice steady and wise. Alex nods, often seeking her wisdom when he feels uncertain, recognizing the depth of her experiences and the strength she embodies. The town, having returned to its former charm, now feels stronger, more united than ever before. The community garden serves as a gathering place, where families come together to share stories, plant seeds, and harvest the fruits of their labor. Laughter and conversation float through the air, echoing the sense of hope that now fills the hearts of the residents. One sunny Saturday, the neighborhood organizes a block party to celebrate their achievements and fortify their bonds. Tables overflow with potluck dishes, and laughter fills the air as music plays from a small speaker set up in the yard. Dorothy, surrounded by friends and neighbors, beams with pride. The children run around, playing games, while adults engage in heartfelt conversations, sharing stories about their lives and dreams for the future. As the sun sets, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink, Dorothy is invited to say a few words. Standing up, she feels a rush of gratitude and joy as she looks out at the faces illuminated by fairy lights. I stand before you today not just as Dorothy Hayes, but as part of this beautiful community we've built together, she begins, her voice steady yet filled with emotion. This is proof that one person can spark change, but it's the collective spirit of a community that sustains it. Her words resonate deeply, echoing the journey they've all undertaken. The crowd erupts in applause, a testament to the shared respect and admiration they hold for one another. The night unfolds with dancing and laughter, and in those moments, Dorothy realizes how far they've come together, a community reborn from the ashes of fear and turmoil. In the quiet moments that follow, as the festivities wind down and the stars twinkle overhead, Dorothy reflects on her life's journey. She thinks about her military service, the sacrifices she made, and the resilience she cultivated throughout the years. The struggles she faced with the bikers now feel like a distant memory, overshadowed by the joy of what they've created together. Sitting back on her porch after the party, Dorothy savors a moment of tranquility. The soft sounds of crickets chirping fill the night air, and she closes her eyes, allowing herself to bask in the peace she fought so hard to achieve. A deep sense of fulfillment washes over her. She knows that her fight wasn't just about silencing the chaos, it was about igniting a spark in her community and reminding them of their strength. And as she sits there, surrounded by the warmth of friendship and love, Dorothy understands that she is not just a witness to this change but an integral part of it. She is a link in the chain of resilience that binds them all together, and her heart swells with hope for what lies ahead. The camera pans out, capturing the peaceful scene of Dorothy on her porch, the lights of the neighborhood twinkling softly in the background. A voiceover lingers, echoing her sentiments. In unity, there is strength. In strength, there is hope. Together, we can build a future worth fighting for. The screen fades to black, leaving viewers with a sense of inspiration and the understanding that change begins with one person but flourishes in the hearts of many. "Ms. Hayes," Alex says one afternoon, sitting on the porch steps, "I'm thinking about running for town council. You think I've got what it takes?" Dorothy chuckles, her eyes twinkling. "You've got heart, Alex. And if you've got heart, you've got everything you need." Her days are peaceful but purposeful. She spends her mornings tending to her garden, her afternoons mentoring local kids, and her evenings writing letters to old friends from her military days. Each letter ends with the same words, "There's always more to do." One evening, as Dorothy sips her tea, a sleek black car pulls up in front of her house. A man in a sharp suit steps out, his demeanor professional but warm. "Ms. Hayes," he says, extending his hand. "We've heard a lot about you. Your story, your courage, it's inspiring. We could use someone like you to help with a new initiative." Dorothy studies him for a moment, her keen eyes assessing his sincerity. "What kind of initiative?" she asks, her tone calm but curious. "Community resilience programs," the man replies. "Helping other towns rebuild and protect themselves, just like yours did. It won't be easy, but we think you'd be perfect for the job." Dorothy leans back in her chair, a small smile tugging at her lips. The idea of a new challenge stirs something within her, a sense of purpose she thought might have faded with time. "I'll think about it," she says, her voice steady but tinged with intrigue. As the man nods and drives away, Dorothy watches the taillights fade into the distance, a spark of anticipation glimmering in her eyes. Dorothy's story reminds us that courage, resilience, and community can overcome even the toughest challenges. But her journey also invites us to take a closer look at our own lives. If Dorothy's story inspired you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments below. Let's keep her legacy alive by spreading the message of hope and resilience to others. Dorothy Hayes may be 90, but her story is far from over, and neither is ours. Stay tuned for what's to come.